So my name is Richard Roberts. I'm the moderator of the panel. I'm a managing director in the acquisitions group at Redstone Equity Partners here and I'm based here in New York City. To my immediate right is Martin Dunn, who is the founder, owner, and chief executive officer of Dunn Development. They're a diversified developer and owner of affordable housing, and most, if not all, of that housing is in the 5 boroughs of New York. Four boroughs. He's a graduate of Cornell University. Ralph Fasano is to Martin's right. He is the executive director at Concern for Independent Living, where he's probably been there nearly 25 years. Concern is a supportive housing provider, service provider, and developer of supportive housing, and very accomplished in the field. And Ralph is a graduate of both NYU Stern School of Business and Columbia Teachers College. Leora Jontef is the VP for Multifamily New Construction Finance at the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. And prior to joining New York State, which is a relatively recent development, she spent nearly a decade at HPD. Most recently as the Assistant Commissioner for the Division of Storm Recovery and Resiliency. And she's a graduate of Vassar College and has a master's from Baruch. And then last but not least is Paula Roy Carruthers, who is Executive Vice President for Real Estate at the New York City Housing Development Corporation. Jeez, I can't believe I had a brain fart on that. Prior to various positions at New York State and New York City. Now, before we start the panel, I got one quick question for them, and there is a correct answer to this, right? So the NBA finals start tonight, and I'm just going to ask each panelist to respond whether they predict Golden State or Cleveland to win, and I'm going to help them. Martin?
Cleveland.
Ralph?
Cleveland.
Leora?
Cleveland.
Paula? Okay, there we go. Now that's probably the most support the Cavaliers are going to get outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So.
Can we go now?
Exactly. So with that, I just want to, and just to explain the format here. So the panel is, uncertain times and dealing with financing gaps in projects in uncertain times. And I was going to just set the stage a little bit, and then each of the panelists was going to talk for a little bit, just to kind of give some perspective. I think we would start with Leora and Paula, who kind of provide the city and state perspective and the perspective from governmental partners, and then we'll kind of drill down to Ralph and Martin, who are developers who are working in the context of specific projects, specific deals that need to get done. Before we start, we wanted to get a little bit of a sense as to who is in the room. And so, how many folks in the room are supportive housing developers or work with supportive housing developers? And how many people in the room are finance folks? And how many people in the room are government folks? Anybody else you want to know about? If you're a boy, raise your hand. Oh, service providers. And people who would consider themselves to be moderately to extremely knowledgeable about the development process.
Oh,
Come on. We see who you are. We see the people. Jeez. And how many people feel they need to learn more about the development process or not as experienced? All right. Okay. So I think that gives us a little bit of sense as to, and helps us kind of tailor our remarks. So we're going to talk. We don't have any PowerPoint presentations. And we hope to have enough time for questions and to have some an interactive part of the dialogue. You know, when this panel was originally envisioned, I think that there was a lot more uncertainty that we were potentially facing. There were some swirling kind of uncertainty around the financial commitments at the government level, particularly at the state, and that thankfully was resolved at the end of the last legislative session, and the governor made a big announcement, I guess, last week, kind of heralding the over $2.5 billion of resources that have been allocated to affordable housing in New York State. A really historic commitment, and coupled with the commitment that had already been made at the city level, there really is a lot of cause for celebration with respect to that. And so that is one kind of point of uncertainty that was really kind of removed and taken off the table. But we nonetheless are confronting a big issue, big issues in the financing market, and most notably around the low-income housing tax credit program, in which we probably, Martin, what would you say, over the last 10 years have had kind of unabated and unabashed increases in tax credit pricing, and we really have had experienced a pretty good decade in terms of the resources that have been available under the tax credit program. But unfortunately, on November 9th, like a bad game of musical chairs that the children play, you know, the music kind of stopped. And with the election and the changes in Washington, with the Republicans having both houses of Congress and the executive branch, that created new and renewed speculation around comprehensive tax reform. Now, tax reform is something that had been discussed for a variety of different years. Even those of you who remember Barack Obama might recall that even Barack Obama said that marginal corporate tax rates were too high, and had advocated for a reduction of rates from the current 35% to 28%. So even the former president had and there was a consensus, I think, among both parties. But the problem was that no one took any of that talk seriously, because given the different parties controlling different parts of government and the general kind of gridlock in Washington, no one believed that anything could actually get done and happen in that regard. So the fact that this tax reform had been out there had not really affected the market. And now, with the change and the seeming commitment on the part of the president and Congress to move on tax reform, investors were, I think, looking at the models in which they had based the valuation of the tax credit on the 35% marginal corporate tax rate, and there was a lot of uncertainty that was thrown into the mix. The Trump campaign platform, and when you go to Washington, and I've been to Washington several times, and you talk to people on the administration side, they are committed to attempting to get marginal corporate tax rates to 15% from the current 35%. Economists, the general consensus is for every 1% reduction in the corporate tax rate, though, you will need, because things kind of have to balance out and pay for themselves, you'll need about $120 billion of savings in order to get for each 1% of reduction in corporate tax rate. So to get from 35 to 25, they'll need $1 trillion, and to get to 35 to 15, they'll need $2 trillion. And it's very complicated, but with the border adjustment tax going away and a variety of other things going away, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to whether they actually will be able to enact tax reform. But they are nonetheless talking in earnest about reducing corporate taxes. The House had historically looked for rates in the 20% range. There was a plan that was put out by Paul Ryan called A Better Way, And so there was then kind of a general consensus that, well, maybe it won't be 15, maybe it'll be closer to 20. Well, 20 is still pretty expensive, maybe it'll be 25. And so a part of the uncertainty that has existed over the course of since the election has really created a lot of consternation in the investor community. And most investors are now settling in at around 25% in terms of how they're viewing corporate tax, where they think corporate tax rates will go. And so when you model that, right, the LIHTC program becomes less valuable because you'll have less taxes to offset. And so that had a almost immediate and dramatic impact on pricing. And I would say, as a general matter, throughout the country, pricing went from down for about 10 cents to 15 cents, maybe 20 cents in the market. And that had a dramatic impact on deals in the kind of the end of the year time frame and as we kind of look forward. And increasingly now, as this uncertainty continues to swirl, people really just don't have a good idea as to where they should be pricing things. And so that has created a tremendous amount of uncertainty, coupled with, around the time that the election took place, interest rates started to tick up. Both in the term from the standpoint of just the general kind of market view on what the Trump administration would be doing, but also in the background, the Federal Reserve was starting to increase the federal funds rate, and they have made a commitment that they will start to continue to raise rates. And so you had kind of the double whammy affecting deals of tax credit pricing going down, and then coupled with debt becoming more expensive, creating gaps in these deals. And someone at Shitty thought it would be a good idea to talk about this. And so that's why we're here. So and the bar doesn't open for an hour, right? So we're gonna get into this and talk about these issues from the perspective of the government and also from the perspective of our development partners. Now, one of the things that New York, in addition to the resources that have been allocated, both at the city and state level, one of the advantages that New York has really enjoyed is the fact that we have such an effective delivery system. We have a lot of smart people here. We have a history of producing a significant number of units. There's a lot of creativity in our programming. And so with that as a backdrop, we thought it would be good to get into some questions around what this uncertainty has caused and the reactions. How did the agencies respond? How did experienced developers respond? What is now on the horizon as this uncertainty continues? And what can be done going forward? Those are the types of questions that we hope to get into. And I don't know if you and Paula drew straws or who wants to go first, but I think Paula was going to go first. I think that's what we decided. That was a little bit of that's what we decided on the call that we had yesterday to discuss this.
That is what we decided.
Yes, okay. Paula?
Thank you, Richard. It's a tough act to follow. Thank you all for being here today. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing, HTC and HPD have been doing in DC to kind of combat some of these threats that we see coming down the horizon, and also talk a little bit about how we've dealt with them kind of on a deal-by-deal basis in our most recent issuances. So let's just kind of laying the landscape of what's happening. I think Richard talked a lot about the federal tax reform. In DC, what we found on the Hill, the representatives and their staffers are being kind of bombarded in all directions by all these different issues, right? There's immigration and there's education, and we've really made the case that housing is something that transcends kind of across the borders. It's an issue that affects every state in the nation equally, that they're the programs that we need to really function in New York City are the same programs that are helping rural communities and suburban communities. And so we've made that point really strong. I think, what we found every time we go to DC and talking to folks is that it's really important for them to hear it from a lot of different parties. So it's important for them to hear from us, but also from the business side on how kind of these tax reforms and the budget cuts are really bad for business, right? And the more money that it's not just money that the private sector has to put in, but it's it means less production overall, and in the end it means less homes for people. So I think we all have seen that the most recent, I think the most heavy hitting hit to us has been the HUD budget cuts. So President Trump proposed a reduction in 15% to HUD's budget, and as part of that, a 5% cut to Section 8, and the complete elimination of CDBG and home and BASH and other programs as well. And obviously, CDBG funds, the loss of that is huge. Home supports so much of our supportive housing that we build. HPD uses it for their home ownership programs. It is to support all kinds of things like inspections and ensuring that tenants have the support that they need with landlords. So obviously those are really bad. Section 8, any reduction, I think, there was some thought that the Section 8 cuts would be deeper than they were. I think, really any cut to Section 8 is problematic. Across the in New York City alone, 125,000 families are supported through Section 8 vouchers, and half of those are people who are seniors or disabled. So, we obviously would love to see, those numbers go up, but overall it's been challenging. And I think, again, when we have these conversations in DC, there's this tendency to kind of separate the budget conversations from tax reform conversations, and in many cases that's okay. I think for affordable housing, we're so intimately entwined, and in the budget cuts, and so we've been kind of trying to point that out as well, that when you have the budget cuts on one side and tax reform, it's usually things like the tax credit and tax exempt bonds that are able to fill these gaps that are created by budget cuts. And so there's we've tried to make the argument that there needs to be a tie in the connection to this. And so talking about the housing, the tax credit a little bit, that's another program that's really kind of the heavy hitter for development. Across the nation, 90% of all affordable housing that's built is built using the housing credit. And almost 100,000 jobs are created through the tax credit. And so in the past, when there have been cuts, like when the Section 202 HUD program was cut, we were able to use the tax credit as ways to kind of infill there. So that's, I think, a really big challenge for us. I'm not going to talk about the corporate tax rates. I think we talked a little bit about that. We have seen that really dramatic reduction in the pricing in our deals, even without the tax reform happening yet. Just kind of the concern that it is going to happen has impacted us significantly, and I think I think we are kind of working on ways so that we'll be able to deal with consequences of when it does happen. So it's not all totally negative, though. I think while there are a lot of these threats, there are some opportunities on the federal front. The Kent-Will Hatch low-income housing tax credit reform program took many years to get to this point, and it proposes a number of changes to the housing credit, and all of them we support. I think the two that really impact New York City the most is setting that 4% credit rate and allowing for income averaging so we can hit kind of lower levels of affordability and still use the tax credit. And those two bills, there's a bill on the House and on the Senate. Peter O'Neill is the counter bill to Canberra House. They're all kind of moving along, I think, gaining support, and those are things that I think we need to continue as a community to kind of advocate for and support, because it just gives us more tools in our toolbox. At a kind of more localized level, what we've been doing at HDC, particularly in the spring, and trying to figure out how we can fill the gaps that have already been created by some of this uncertainty, is putting cost containment measures into all of our deals. For our June deals, we're extending the terms and the maturities of our mortgages so that we can kind of stretch the subsidy and also size more debt in all of those deals, which has given us a little bit more flexibility so we can fill some of these gaps that have developed over the last 6 to 8 months. And then we've been really implementing a new risk share program through, we call our FFB program. It's the Federal Financing Bank through the U.S. Treasury Department. And it just gives us a lower cost pricing on our deals, and it's a really great tool that we've been using on a number of preservation deals and a few select new construction deals as well. And it's another way that just gives us another tool that we can provide a little bit better or more competitive financing. And then finally, I just want to say, the city and the state have been working really lockstep in figuring out ways to utilize volume cap to the best that we can, and make sure that we're kind of driving that volume cap usage to get the most benefit out of it for all of the deals that we do. And there's been a really great collaboration between HCR and HPD and HDC. And in fact, all the logging that we have been doing, we do together often, as well as with NYCHA. And HDC has been part of the national organization where we've been really kind of finding ways that we can make these arguments stronger by creating partnerships amongst different states and different representatives, so we're not just in this echo chamber talking to ourselves. And then finally, I think while we're anticipating all of these, ever since November, I think we've been anticipating the worst, and it seems to keep going worse and worse. But we have been through down cycles before. I think many of you have been here, in this industry for a long time, and we're always thinking creatively and finding ways to change the way we do things. And also, we're really lucky to have a mayor and a governor who really support affordable housing. So with the signing of the MOU and the funding for HFA towards all these supported deals, and then on the city side, the mayor's commitment of $1.9 billion on top of the original commitment to the housing plan, $8.9 billion that was originally committed. It really gives us, it allows us to continue to plow forward with our pipeline.
Paul makes a great point about the proposed HUD budget, which is not really affecting deals yet, but the prospect of it is pretty concerning from the standpoint of. And it's interesting because when you get to Washington and you talk to them particularly the hardest of the hardcore on the right, when you talk to them about the LIHTC program, affordable housing, they really like LIHTC because there's a lot of broad-based support for LIHTC in Washington, broad-based bipartisan support. And it's a private sector solution. It's administered by the states. It has these elements that kind of this market kind of based approach. But then you kind of go through it. You have kind of a real schizophrenic kind of moment when you try to talk to those same people and try to defend home and CDBG, because they don't really want to hear that. But the thing they don't understand, or the thing you have to educate them on, is that these tools are complementary. In a public-private partnership, you need the private and you need the public, right? And so the combination of the private capital and the public capital is what makes the deals and the transactions work. New York?
Okay. Good afternoon. So just sort of trying to build on the themes of Richard and Paula, I'm going to just talk for a second about the state's in business and about our capital and what we're doing and what our expectations are of our partners, because as Richard said, this is a public-private partnership, and what kind of adaptations we've made over the last, well, we've been there 7 months, but I can just talk about over the last half a year. It is an uncertain time, but I think it's also a very dynamic moment. The state currently has a $20 billion 5-year investment in affordable and supportive housing. We're committed to 100,000 units, and in particular to this audience, 6,000 supportive housing units. And indeed, as Richard said, the budget was passed, and we finally have $2.5 billion in additional capital resources on top of the $1 billion of the base capital that is in part of our appropriation. And in particular to this group that's here today, part of our goals are the building direct goals, which are supportive housing, middle income, family housing, senior housing. And we are looking to address and finance integrated permanent supportive housing for vulnerable populations. And I think we are also at a unique moment because we do have ESHI. I know there's a competing panel on Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative with my colleague Sean Fitzgerald. We're both very active in the interagency working group. And I think it's a moment to really think that the state has this really coordinated effort with all of the O agencies, as they're called, to provide not just services, but a rental subsidy. And I think given a lot of uncertainty out there, it's really great to know that there are opportunities to provide services plus rental subsidy up to $25,000 a unit for the supportive housing units in your project. And you can think about the rental subsidy as sort of like a mini hack. So instead of Project Beach, you can try to do something with the ESHI award and to make the deals work. And maybe Ralph Martin will be talking about that a little bit. So with the capital and the ESHI, and despite the uncertainty, I think the state's in business. We're moving forward, and we do have expectations though of our development partners and absolutely and institutional investors. Just talk a moment about what our expectations are and how we're managing the situation. We are very interested in coordinating thoughtful investment throughout the state, right? I mean, yes, I did spend time with HPD, but now it's a much greater portfolio, and keeping our eye on what's going on in Buffalo and Rochester and Utica and Syracuse. So these are important parts of our state, and we have needs and urban disinvestment, and we have an obligation to address it. We're actively building a pipeline in Westchester, Long Island, and the rest of the state. And we want quality design for families and seniors and integrated supportive housing. And one of the things I'm going to say a couple of times is that we want people to come to us to talk about their deals before they're fully made. We get a lot of deals that are like, okay, we're going to close in 5 weeks because we've got building permits and fully designed and we're ready to go. And we'd like to hear more about it before it's fully done, so we can talk about how we achieve our policy objectives. Some things for the supportive housing developers, I think, to always to sort of think about is ESHI award, the timing of the award. ESHI award for 8 units, but if you're building a housing development or you're partnered with someone who's got 108 units, and is that a good match? Our goal is really to get a minimum of half of 50% of units supportive housing in a project. So I think being thoughtful about how you partner, if you're not a developer but just a service provider, how you partner with your developer, what's your relationship. And I would also say for the bond finance deals, the capital money that we're using as supported debt is the Supportive Housing Opportunity Program, and that was released last year. It was $150 million, and that was in the open window RFP, and that should be coming out any day now. But it's really not meant to be standalone financing. It's to be partnered with the tax-exempt deals. And we think we've adjusted some of the subsidy amounts to reflect the uncertainties, the changes in the market. We think that we've created situation where it's a little easier to sort of match up the programs together. And in the end, we're looking for deals where we're not over-subsidizing, and I think that's important to our partner, for our partners. We want efficient deals, smart deals, and we're understanding of the situation in the market, but we're not looking to over-subsidize deals. Taking good notes from all the editors that HTC is doing, and we'll talk later. But the other things we also, and some of these are similar talking points that we sort of brought up at NISAFA when Rich was on the panel with representing HTC. We want sort of transparency with our syndicators and making sure that it's right now not less than a 25% corporate tax rate. I had a deal that came to me and it was showing 87-cent raise, not that far from New York City. I don't think it's fair for the government to over-subsidize those kinds of deals. So I think transparency is important. How we're adapting right now, we just flushed out all the deals that were pre-election, and the deals that closed by March 31st all had much higher raises, and now we're our new tranche. And we think our term sheets are adaptable to cover the gaps as long as the deals are efficient and smart and achieve our policy goals. And I think we have weathered the storm. We did have a deal in December in Buffalo that really fell apart because it was a multi-investor fund and an adaptive reuse deal, and the deal didn't close on time. It's a fascinating project, the former A&P warehouse in Buffalo that didn't close on time. Couldn't close because the investors backed out. But I think with a lot of collaboration with our city partners in Buffalo, the state putting interest on stake, the developer stepping up, we were able to get the deal done. And I sort of think that exemplifies what we're willing to do is work with everyone and collaborate, and not just giving things on a platter and they're like, we're ready to go. Like we want to work together with everyone and get the best deal possible. So certainly, if you have transactions and you want to talk, you can talk to me, talk to Sean, Lenny Swale. There's a bunch of us here today, and we're happy to discuss.
Thank you, Leora. I mean, one point. I mean, there's a lot there, and thank you very much for that. But one point that we talked about on the preparatory call that Leora made was the advantage that I think we have in New York, which is pretty unique, because I think both at the state and city level, they're very encouraging of folks coming in and talking through issues that get created or are present in deals. And that is not true in many parts of the country where there's much more of a wall and not as much dialogue. And if a deal doesn't work, just go away. It doesn't get done. But I think here there is much more of a spirit of cooperation, collaboration around those issues. So thanks for that. We'll get into some questions as we move forward. I don't know if you guys, Ralph?
No. Martin just pointed to me.
Okay. I guess that's
I had two presentations, one if Martin went first and one if I went first. So if Martin went first, you know Martin, he's very thorough. I was going to say, I have two things to add. You should consider bake sales and car washes to add to the revenues. So a little bit more difficult with me going first. I'm going to kind of skip some of the things that I wrote down, knowing that Martin will cover them better than me. And if he doesn't, I'll jump back to some of the things. So first, the whole premise of this workshop and the notion of working in uncertain times. And I kind of look at that a little bit differently. We always work in uncertain times. It's always been difficult. Have you ever had a project that has not had obstacles and uncertainty, and the end result is that we pretty much always get them done, and we continue to develop the housing. So last week a couple of us were at this retreat with housing providers, and it was at a Buddhist monastery, and we walked around without our shoes on and did some meditation walking, and hopefully it won't be on one of these nightly shows. We don't think there are any cameras, but so anyway, very good news to hear that the subsidy level was looked at. I know the advocates have been asking for that, and great news that the city and state are, just paying attention to the feasibility of projects. I flew in from Washington today to the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans Conference, and I got to present on a couple of our projects. And in general, New York is the envy of the rest of the country. The support that the city and the state give us as developers is unmatched anywhere else, and so we appreciate all that. So I think in terms of filling the cracks, this is really no different, and I apologize for the simplicity of my presentation, but it's really everything we do is about sources and uses, and we have to maximize our sources and minimize our uses without affecting the quality of our programs. So I was worried that my flight was going to be late, and I asked Chris Betts, our consultant, who knows this stuff much better than I do, if he could fill in for me if I didn't make it. And I was hoping my flight would be late, but it wasn't. But he did send me an email with certain suggestions, and for many of the developers, I think you know this, but increasing rents increases the first mortgage, that increases the sources. I think choosing your investor is a really important thing, and one of the things I think that really encapsulates all of this is developing relationships with partners over a period of time. And during more difficult times, depending on those relationships, whether it be the syndicator, the contractor, the architect, the funding sources, to bend a little to make a project work. And that's what we all do in difficult times. So choosing investors that you trust and that you've worked with, or you know the people involved, is really important. So bringing in some of the other sources. So as a not-for-profit, we're eligible for HHAP funds, and we often look at a project, and the HHAP is often a gap filler. And during difficult times, their input into a project is more than other times. So sometimes it's a couple of $1 million, but we've gotten as much as $8 to $10 million in projects. It's a great source of funding. Difficult to manage all of the different sources. The more sources you get, the more difficult it is. We just completed a project in the Bronx called No Road Terrace, and it's the first project that we've done without OMH Capital. And our initial reaction to the pulling out of OMH Capital's services only award, along with a lot of other providers, was that we're not going to be able to do this. OMH has been the mainstay. Oh, I'm sorry. The Office of Mental Health, the Homeless Housing Assistance Program, HHAP Homeless Housing Assistance Program. Right. Okay. So anyway, looking to those sources to fill gaps that are not filled anywhere else. We also use the Federal Home Loan. I can't say it without the acronym. Federal Home Loan Bank Affordable Housing Program, and they're a gap filler. One of the things there, if you apply to them early in a project and you don't have the other commitments, you're unlikely to get funded, because having the commitments is a large part of getting funded. So what we've often done there, we've done this with HHAP as well, is put up our own dollars. So over the years, we've collected developer fees. There's developer fees within the individual project, and we basically say, we think we're going to get a $1.5 million AHP grant. If we don't get it, we'll fund it ourselves. We get the other commitments, we apply to the Federal Home Loan Bank, get the funding, and replace the funds that we were going to put up. So we've done that with the HHAP program, and the timing didn't coincide. And it's certainly risky for organizations to do that, but we believe that we're mission-oriented, and the money that we've saved as a result of developer fees should go towards expanding what we're going to do in the future. So along with, so perhaps contributing some of our developer fee, or sometimes all of it, towards the project. So I'm going to stop there and let Martin conclude with everything, and then we'll open this up for discussion at some point.
Ralph makes a great point also about partnership and the willingness of partners to kind of step up when you have these, when you have these issues. And I think it's a big component. We'll delve into that a little bit in the Q&A.
So I wasn't at the meditation retreat, but I thought I'd practice patience and go last, because that's not my strong suit. So I was going to talk about two deals and how we dealt with the uncertainty, and then share my perspectives on the broader environment. But the first thing is I just want for people that may not be in the weeds on this to explain why the corporate tax rate affected pricing, because the media has covered this and they get it wrong. They talk about it's reduced demand. If taxes go down, banks won't have the same demand. That's not the direct impact. The idea is that when you're selling tax credits, you're selling two things. You're not just selling the tax credits, you're selling depreciation losses. So when the investor owns 99.99% of the partnership or LLC, they get 99.99% of the tax credits, but they also get the losses. So your project may do just a little bit better than maybe even on a cash basis, but the building that you built is getting depreciated, and on paper let's say you're losing $500,000 a year. Or let's say on a bigger project you're losing $1 million a year. So when you sell those losses, it's like if you make a charitable contribution or have mortgage interest. It's not a tax credit. You don't get $1 back for each dollar tax credits. You get to reduce your income that you pay taxes on. So if you have $1 million of depreciation losses at a 35% tax rate, that was worth $350,000 in cash to the bank each year. At a 15% tax rate, it's worth $150,000 each year. Over 10 years, it's a lot. And that's why for people that have never understood why people pay more than $1 for $1 of tax credits, it's because they're buying losses. And that's the direct impact. At the same time, as Richard mentioned, when interest rates rise, the reason is when people make equity investments, the return they're looking for is proportionate to what they could get with a secured investment, an investment secured by a mortgage. So when interest rates rise, expected returns or yields on equity investments rise. And so these things were happening at the same time. So we had one project that closed in January, and we had one project that's scheduled to close shortly in June. So the January deal was an HCR 9% deal, and we had a direct investor, and when post-election we were approached and said we're going to have to re-underwrite your deal and not change the pricing up front, but we're going to have to switch to having a downward adjuster. So if the tax rate changes anytime in the next 5 years, we're going to reduce what we pay, and we'll have to hold back money equivalent to what that might be, and it would effectively wipe out most of the developer fee. And so I'll jump to the end and say they ended up honoring the original deal as did most banks in New York, but New York was the exception. And around the country, the banks did not hold their pricing. In New York, I think it had a lot to do with government partners. For people that don't know, they use a very heavy hand in relationships to say you cannot walk away from deals late in the game when we've already pricing bonds or we're about to price bonds and deals are fully cooked. We have a long history, we'll remember. If you walk away from us now, you may not be let back in the door. And there was a lot of pressure, and it worked. But people should be aware that around the rest of the country, these same investors did change pricing. You did see very significant walked because of the uncertainty. And so we got very lucky. But the only reason we got so lucky is our deal was not supposed to close at that time. We were supposed to be a March-April deal, and we had decided to try to speed up. Our original underwriting was for March or April, but we had decided to try to see if we could close in December for a number of reasons. And so when the deals were made, again with tremendous pressure, particularly from the city of New York in HTC. Ours is a state deal, but we rode the coattails. When the banks caved, they caved on all their New York State deals. And so the HCR deals benefited as well. But they said that they weren't doing it past December. For us, we had a long relationship, and they agreed to give us the January 15th. If we had not been able to move on that timeline, then they wouldn't have honored the pricing. And to give some perspective to what the bank was, the investor was facing, is when the market was so strong and so consistent, as Richard said, for so many years, they were, syndicators were closing deals without the bank being formally in. They were closing them on warehouse lines of credit with a verbal sign-off but not a formal sign-off from the bank. So, Richard, we're not ready to close, we'll come in 4 months, but that deal's good. Richard closes and
Funds the money.
that
has a legal obligation to
fund it all
fund it all.
at a $1.16, and now I say, wow, my world just changed. I don't have credit approval on that. I can't get credit approval on that. I'm going to walk away. And Richard's borrowed money against my verbal, non-binding commitment. Our particular bank had $250 million, I think, of those verbal commitments out that they hadn't gotten credit approval. So for their world, their first priority was to protect their syndicators who had closed on deals and fronted money based on unofficial sign-off. Secondary was the deals that were about to close, and then third were deals that were 3-6 months out. And this was all happening a month from when deals were supposed to close. And so you can understand it wasn't, there was much bigger forces at play. So anyways, what enabled us to move and close so fast? You know, sometimes, Ralph mentioned the more funders you bring in, the harder it is. Our project was very efficient. We were using only one funder, only HCR, no HHAP. I shouldn't say that. We did have OPWD money, which but
Office for people with
disabilities. But we primarily had one funder, which meant we could control the timeline. We weren't waiting for other people's budget cycles, but it was our supportive housing funder that was having challenges moving as fast. And the key was HCR, as the investor, they knew and they understood the real estate. Sean Fitzgerald's on another panel, but he gets the credit for this. He knew that we missed it by a week. It was millions of dollars out of the deal. And put the pressure on the O agencies to say, I know we always say there's deadlines, or we always say the sky's falling, but this is a real one. You have to get your process done, or we fall off a cliff. And got it all to happen. The reason, again, efficiency and effectiveness of use of subsidy enabled us to not have, to be in that position. Our construction costs in January were $245 a square foot, and our land price was $45 a square foot, which for New York City, this is a site in the Bronx, that's very cost efficient and effective. We were in a similar position on our June deal. Our June deal is an HFA bond deal, 4% tax credits and SHOP funds, the Supportive Housing Opportunity Funds, and half of the units are the ESHI units with OTDA. And again, and that deal obviously is closed in June. We were caught up in this, and we saw a 15 or 16 cent drop in our pricing. 15 cent drop in our pricing. And the reason, but it did not affect us because we were that far under the subsidy limits that we could absorb, not all of it, we put in a little bit, we deferred more developer fee, but we were able to still work within the state's term sheets without HPD or without HHAP because of the efficiency. And so in some, you may have said, 6 months ago, why are you trying to come in so low? We do it because we think being efficient and being able to do more units is so important. But when there's a storm like this, being efficient can mean you can still close without having to go back and look for another funding source. Also, having only one funding source again means we can work on the timeline of just us and our state partner. And we're again getting a very aggressive, we had a very aggressive land price, and we're getting a very aggressive construction price. in part because we were negotiating with a contractor and the timing of when they start and when their subs had work available in both projects, the January project and the June project. The contractor's doing them, we're finishing one building of ours, and the next month, we're moving their entire crews to the new site with no gap. So we finished the building in January, they started building in January. We have a contractor finishing the building in May that's going to move to the building in June. And being able to get a price, this is a 12-story building on a challenging site, $265 a square foot in the Bronx. Again, for a high-rise building, a very aggressive price, but we're able to negotiate it and guarantee timelines because we have only one government partner and we're not waiting for other people's cycles. But the other thing that was very important for us, to work within HFA term sheet limits is the amount of first mortgage debt we leverage. So Leora talked about the ESHI funds being able to leverage debt. The requirement was you had to get to at least a 50% area median income rent on the ESHI units. We were able to get to 55%. Our partners Canva on this, and we, they were able to get a staffing level that worked for them and get to a 55% AMI rent, which meant we supported more debt, which meant we needed less subsidy. If we were not at that rent, we would have had a significant gap, and we would not have been able to do this without going back. And so again, it is, the minimum, the requirement was 50%. You'd say, why go higher and to do that if you didn't have to? Because in the end, it gave us cushion in the deal. And I've been doing this supportive housing development for 25 years, so we've been very strong the last 7 or 8 years, but I've been through the troughs. In 2008, after that crash, we saw pricing go down to 80 cents. We closed 2 phases of a deal in one block where it was like a 24-cent difference. We closed the deal at 80 cents during the bottom of that cycle, and most of our offers were in the 70s. So I've seen much worse, and we know that things can change any time. So always having cushion for when there's uncertainty, I think certainly helps. Now, one of the things we were counting on is that we were told that the ESHI awards, the rents would trend up, and being aggressive on, not thinking you have to account for the subsidy being flat, and as the rents go up, your services go down. We assumed that the rent would go up, and so there's been some question among OTDA about whether they're escalating. I'm not sure if that's been resolved, but we in Canada were counting on that those rents that their subsidy for the rents will go up, so that this level of services they agreed to in year one is not going to have to be cut to cover rent increases. So some kind of, some broader perspectives on the market. I think the good news is in tax reform, it used to be when we talked about tax reform, our worry was that the low-income housing taxpayer program would go away, right? If we did this several years back, that's what the worry was. The good thing now is that there's broad bipartisan support for the taxpayer program, so we're not worried about that. The second thing that I would have been worried about when in the change of administrations was Community Reinvestment Act saved. Because in New York, we benefit from Community Reinvestment Act very significantly. If Community Reinvestment Act went away, it would have a bigger impact on pricing than tax reform. Because you'd be talking about yields going from 4%, 3% to 7%.
And then this is part of the reason you also see a huge dichotomy between what happens in New York City and the rest of the state. The pricing options, the availability of capital is much more limited. And just to point out, right, Leora's example of the deal upstate that did not get done because it was in a multi-investor fund, which typically does not involve CRA-motivated investors, relative to what Martin has described, what's happened in his deals in New York City, where he's got the benefit of the CRA investor who remains committed to doing the deal, albeit at different pricing, but still the pricing that enables the deal to work.
The other thing is, so I think the government agencies were right in December to use a very heavy hand and bully banks to hold the line. Thank you. But I think it's a very different environment now, and I think the ability to push one standard or one is much more limited. I don't think it's feasible. There's so many different factors in play that different banks are taking different positions on. Whether they're requiring a downward adjuster, are they willing to provide an upward adjuster? What that means is someone says, okay, I'll price the deal at 25% tax rate. I'm not going to assume 15 or 20. I'll assume 25. But if it ends up going down to 15, I want to be able to lower my pricing based on 20. But if it only ends up at 30, I'll increase my pricing. Some people were willing to do that. Some people were only willing to go down and not up. Some people were not willing to have an adjuster at all. Other people said, I'll adjust for that, but I'm also going to adjust for if there's other things in tax reform. They're talking about eliminating the interest deduction for corporations. That would have an impact. There's also, at one point, there's talk about accelerating depreciation. Instead of depreciating an asset over 27.5 years, maybe you could accelerate. That would be a benefit. So, developers, people in government said, hey, if you get hurt on the tax rate, but you get help elsewhere, we want to balance it off each other. Some people are willing to do that. Some people said it's way too complicated. We're only having one thing that changes. Time frame.
And in one example, and I think one effect of that kind of the differing approach that many institutions are taking with respect to this is that, and I'll be very curious what happens in the state with the state unified funding round that just came out. Prior to this, you would put out a solicitation if you were a developer for equity, and you would have 5 or 6 responses show up. All of those responses typically within a penny or two of one another, and generally similar terms and very high pricing. Now, right, you're maybe developers are getting 2 or 3 responses as opposed to 5 or 6, and you see wildly divergent responses with respect to the pricing. Different tax rates, different treatment with respect to adjusters, as Martin has pointed out, and so it's created, that's a different kind of uncertainty with respect to how to move forward.
And our deal in June, we dropped from $1.18 to $1.03, and banks, close your ears. I did make a few concessions on terms.
Hercules.
Richard was our syndicator. He did tell me that Cleveland would take a dive to the Celtics if I gave him a deal with $1
Didn't happen.
Couldn't happen. It looked like there for a moment they were throwing the games, but it didn't happen. So there's other things. The time frame on the adjuster. So you had banks saying we want a 5-year period to capture. Other people were saying once the building's placed in service, a permanent loan conversion. But there's so many different factors, and banks are under national organizations are operating under such different pressure. There's not one size fits all, and I think it's important to acknowledge that because limiting the pool is not what we want right now. Right? Saying you have to have an upward adjuster. If that limits the pool, I don't think that's in our interest because we need options. And it's changing every day. When we redid this with Richard on in the new environment, we had offers in New York City in the mid-90s. People were that far apart. We had people that were looking at step things. We're going to assume 5% in years 1 through 3, and then 28, and then 30. Things like that. There's all sorts of, permutations of this, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. I know HFA, HCR brought in all the banks together to talk about can we come up to one standard that we say this is our policy, and I think there's an acknowledgement that was just not feasible at that time. I don't think it would be feasible today. I think that people are closer together right now with Congress kind of stymied. But by the way, as soon as a more detailed proposal is on the table, all the turbulence comes back on, right? So we're at a point now where it's like no one thinks anything can get done quickly in Congress. If that changes and something more detailed and more real is on the table and it's not 25%, all hell breaks loose. So for us, it's like close as absolutely fast as you can because you don't know what happens in another month, honestly.
I'll write that down.
We're not in a rush. Went on the run.
That's a little inside baseball.
And I think the other thing is it is changing like every week. And so I think it's really important and I realize this might mean it's your consultant doing it or your lawyers, or it is changing rapidly. It's hard to keep up with it. There was times when banks were changing their policies every 4 days, right? And so, kind of, kind of staying on top of that. If, we have relationships with all the banks, but it's really how good professionals, I'm sitting here with Richard that's talking to everyone, and then we've done a lot of deals directly with syndicators, directly with investors. Harder time to do that now because it's impossible for us to know what the 8 or 10 biggest players are doing. Again, and not for the faint of heart to try to do this on your own. So I'd say rely on your strong professionals. It's an important time for them.
So thank you, Martin. So
Next time they play, they're taking the dive.
yes, I guarantee that. One of the things that this kind of plays to, Paul and Leora, is there is a little bit of a game of chicken that seems to be, out there. So, the pricing comes back. You were at $1.03, and Utica, you're at 88 cents. What is going to give? Who's going to blink first? And I think there's a general assumption that government is going to step up and solve this problem. What is your reaction to that? How do you, I know HBC was HBC in the city, as Martin pointed out, took a pretty firm stand in December, in November and December when this problem first was created. It's now a little bit more kind of in flux. How do you make the determination? You're trying to maximize critical and limited subsidy dollars, but you also want the deals to get done. You don't want to be taken for a ride. And then for Ralph and Martin, you don't want to defer so much of your fee that the deal isn't attractive or doesn't make sense from your standpoint. How do we navigate this game of chicken that inevitably presents itself?
So, look, I think we're still in a little bit of the game of chicken at this point, right? I think it's really just been evolving, and it's not like we had one strategy. I mean, we did draw a really solid line in December, and I think put a lot of muscle behind that, and in the end, I think it really benefited our deals, and I think it also benefited some of the deals that we weren't able to do in December, and the banks held that pricing until we closed in April, and I think that's huge. I don't think that has happened elsewhere in the country, as we've said before. And so I think this spring has been really challenging. We're constantly getting questions on is the city are we just gonna step up and kind of fill this gap? I think what's kind of happened is there's just been so many evolving conversations around what to do on both sides, right? And so with this whole idea of the adjusters, I think when that idea first came out, a lot of people were really excited about it and felt like that was just like it was a way to go. I don't want to say the easy way to go, but it was a solution moving forward. And I think what we found.
Yeah, and for people's benefit, the way that would work, right, would be if the adjuster resulted in more proceeds coming into the deal because the rate ended up being higher than what was assumed, that would essentially go to repay subsidy first,
right,
so that you would get your subsidy.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And I think with all of the players, I think the great thing is how this kind of community, everyone who's talking to each other and trying to problem solve for what we're faced with. I think what happened was that then there's a lot more checks and balances that have to happen, right? And so it was found that not all the banks could into doing it. Like said, some wanted to do the downward adjuster, not the upward adjuster. And I think as those conversations played out, it's kind of where we landed today, which is at much lower numbers than we were at in December, and even for the legal deals, but not as low as I think we thought we might have to go. And there's also I think everyone who's working on these deals wants to get them done. There's this rigor, and if you get bumped from a closing season because we can't figure out these gaps, I think recognize that it's a really kind of scary position to be on the other side of the table, on the developer side, and trying to figure out where these gaps are. But from the government side, I think we have to be really careful to not just step forward and fill these. There are all kinds of other gaps that we are having to fill. That, on our projects specifically that we're working on right now, there's funding sources that we thought we were going to get in that we're not, and so HPD is having to find ways to fill some of those. So it's not just, I think, on the credit pricing where the gaps are evolving. There's all these other areas too. So.
And to Ralph's earlier point, it's not like the complexity of these deals goes away. You still have construction issues and gaps that you get presented in these deals for other reasons. I want to ask you, Leora, one question I had was, you, and I just forgot it. Jesus. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I do think it's evolving. I think the state's in a unique point now because we never had this much capital before, and so thinking and strategizing how to deploy it to, yes, we are housing finance agency on the HFA side, but now we have capital, and it's this combination of just, yes, we're doing loans, but also thinking about how we put out our support in the debt and what are the requirements and thinking about that. So I think it's, it's an important moment because then we think about what policy objectives we're getting and how we are achieving those objectives. In particular, I would say outside of New York City, because we do have a whole state to be thinking about and how we spread those resources around. So I do think, because we are not representing locality, we have to look at things in a more, at a much higher level.
Now I remember my question. So that was good. But, and I've always wanted to ask this, and I've always wanted to, and I wonder if I'll get a straightforward answer to it. So putting pressure on you. Explain the benefit of seeing every deal, of having them all come in and saying, 91 cents here, 88 cents here. Now listen, we always say, because Ralph sees his deal, Martin sees his deal. Now he calls around and asks everybody else about their deals, and we work on the deals we work on. But when you're sitting where you guys sit, you see them all. And so how do you use that information to try to deal with that issue?
So I've learned how to use pivot tables.
Right.
So I have a lot of spreadsheets. We do a little bit of analytics, right? I mean, the numbers don't say it all, but it's nice to have a good pivot table, good teachers to show you how to run the numbers. And I think, when I started a couple months ago, that's what I did. I don't know enough about outside of New York City, so I looked at what does it cost to build outside of the city on a per student basis. And frankly, it's inspiring to think that I may be able to be a developer outside of New York City because it's really incredibly cheap, much cheaper than New York City to be a developer on the TBC per unit level. So I think it helps to see to see the entire pipeline to a universe, how the regions differ, and frankly, look at not just the cost, but the rents. And what we forget, or at least I had no idea that, market can be 60% AMI inside of this locality. And what does that mean for the projects? And I think that's really, these are important pieces of information that help inform the deal, and then we decide, what are our possible goals associated for those localities. So, or those region projects, rather than localities. So I do think, it helps to just provide perspective.
I think, if I can piggyback on that, you know, the thing that is, you know, when we're looking at deals, and obviously at HCR and the state, they're looking at this more broadly, but, you know, I think so much of what we do, we have to keep in mind all the broader policy objectives, right? And so a deal may not, you know, we may end up going with a deal that doesn't, you know, on paper pencil out to be kind of the best scenario for us, but I think that's, you know, in government, we have to kind of always keep our mind kind of looking at the broader picture and what we're trying to achieve with kind of the diversity of deals and serving diversity of people and specific, you know, specific milestones that we're supposed to achieve. But I think that all of that kind of factors in, and without seeing all of the deals in front of us and being able to kind of come out with this wide range, I think it would, you know, we can't run kind of solely based on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We don't want a cookie cutter approach to developing. All of our agencies are different. We have different focuses on different populations, and we do things differently. And I think it would be a mistake if we, you know, if there wasn't an appreciation of diversity. With regards to the whole chicken approach, I guess the way I would look at that would be, I would hope that our developers would have a reputation with you that when we come to you and ask you for something, we're just not trying to make our lives easier. That we've gone everywhere we could to fill the gaps, and you know, we've developed that reputation with you, and you have developed a reputation with us in that you're not going to let the projects fail, and it might be more subsidy for one project than another, but I think the working back and forth with the city and the state has been one in that vein where there's a good faith, trust and effort on both of our parts to just make it work, and some compromise.
You know, on the chicken and egg thing, so in December when, you know, our deal that was on the 9% side, on the 9% side, HCR started talking about filling the gap if banks were going to have adjusters. And my advice then, even though I was with the bank that seemed most likely to do it, was you shouldn't do it, because it just opened, like, you know, even if some deals might have gotten bumped and not closed in that time frame, and we would have to, you know, go out and maybe switch investors, maybe have a delay, and maybe eat some stuff. Once you say for one bank, oh, you're only going to do it if we put in another $1 million, then how do you go to every other bank? I realize developers, when we come in with the square thing, but you're dealing with a whole series of banks, and if 80% of them were saying we're going to honor and a couple weren't, what people saw when banks were like, well, we're going to hold at 35 until something happens. Then all of a sudden 3 banks are at 25, they're all at 25. All of a sudden 3 are at 20, they're all at 20. So the idea that government would just, oh, this bank really you know, has to have more money, they have to have an adjuster, and if government stepped in and done that, I think we would have seen a whole bunch growing. And even though mine was one of the ones that was potentially going to be sacrificed, my advocacy was don't go out the bank even if my deal gets hurt. And I think that was important. Now it's a different time, because there it was, you had the ability to get everyone or almost everyone to hold. And it was huge for New York City and New York State that the number of deals that would have happened if you had to fill gaps in all of them. In terms of developer fee, I think everyone who's a developer knows that that's the cushion for when things go wrong. And the funny thing, there were some deals that got caught up in this that had already deferred so much of the developer fee. When the bank started to look at, okay, what's the impact if we do have a downward adjuster, can you defer fee? And groups that already had, they had no, if that's where the market went, they had no option to make their deals survive. Likewise, if to close the gap, you defer all your developer fee, and you have construction problems, that's your cushion. And by the way, a lot of the banks and investors now particularly won't do a deal if there's not that cushion. But as a developer, nonprofit or for-profit, you know, remember a lot of things go wrong during once you close. Right? All the things that can happen before you close, and more can happen after.
I always say you can do the government, work with the government, close the law, and you have to build it,
Yeah.
and occupy it, and then run it, and provide services.
That's right, this is all a process of So we have 8 minutes officially before before Robin will come here and yank this microphone out of my hand.
But I will say the bars are not open until 5. Bars are at 5, not 4:45. So
No, we don't have time. We're ending at 4:45. So that was not an attempt to be up here longer. Au contraire. But I was leading to the interactive portion of this, where we get to engage you, the audience, in this scintillating conversation. And so I'm hoping there's Brian. You got a question?
Quick question slash.
You know, now we're in a large room. We need you to project. So
I have a quick question slash comment.
quick question slash comment.
Anyway,
Why?
you know, the focus of this panel, and it really is a critical focus, has been the drop in the price of tax credit equity. What if all the other traditional offsets are also eliminated because they're all threat? Is anyone from a policy level thinking about new paradigms for affordable? In other words, all of the premise here is 100% affordable, 100% low income. There already are models of mixed income. The public sector is already expanding their notion of mixed income. When do these deals begin to sort of self-subsidize themselves if all these standard offsets are at risk?
So did everybody hear the question? The emphasis and the focus on the panel has been on the gaps that have been created by LIHTC pricing and other traditional forms of subsidy and support in affordable housing deals. Another way to think about this might be the additional use of mixed income models as kind of a cross subsidization or a way to enhance these deals and to make them more self-sufficient, if you will, or self-financing. So I wonder if you have a reaction to that in the government?
I'll start. So the question of when it starts to cost less to do it. So when you go above 60%, you need more subsidy at 70, 80, and 90 than you do for a unit below 60, but because of the loss of the tax credits on a bond deal.
So you have to be way higher.
But once you're above, you hit like 100, then it's more like a wash, and then as you go higher, your subsidy goes down. It does, you know, since we're in a supportive housing context, it does create more challenges. We're doing a number of projects that have middle income units and supportive housing, significant supportive housing components. One of the challenges is how high are you comfortable pushing rents? We're doing ones at 130, 130. But also has to do with the other things that are happening to try to make subsidy goes further. The new HPD design guidelines that make the units much smaller. For us, in a building that's 30, 40, 50% supportive housing, are we comfortable with very small units pushing middle income rents? We're not so comfortable.
But that's very helpful for you to bring up those other sidelights to this too, because again, where are those offsets? How do you create new offsets? That sort of
And on the HCR, I think, has done a very good job on the 9% credit with their mixed income thing. We're using excess basis to do middle income units where it only helps, right? Where if you're only using 70% of your basis, you could have 30% of the units, where it doesn't cost you any subsidy, reduces your subsidy because you can just increase rents and lower subsidy. So things like that are super important. I think HPD should do that, because that's like free.
And remember, I mean, these are real estate deals, so the notion of where you can get these rents and and then how you can do this, I think plays, and it goes to Leora's earlier point, particularly when you talk about areas, other parts of the state, right, where the LIHTC rents are the market rents, right? So there's not going to be,
I mean, you lose the equity, but you don't get any income.
Right.
So you open it up for people to live there, which is great, be a good school district, there are other opportunities, but there's usually a big economic loss by always the highest shares. There are instances where we do it and we subsidize it, like Warren said, we have no choice, we lost the equity, but there isn't a substantial, there's no gain in rental income on the unit.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, sure.
So this is more on a project expense line, so I don't think.
Can you stand up and speak up?
Oh, sure. This is on the project expense side. Do you have any tips for the developers in the room who see probably a really wide range of construction costs?
That was one of the items I didn't cover.
So the question was, any advice for developers who see a wide range of construction expense numbers and how to manage that or deal with that as an issue?
So Martin's really good at this, and one of the things that we've learned is to get an owner's rep or somebody very expertise in the whole process, very early on in the process, to meet with the architect and the contractor that you've chosen, and to help design the plans in a manner that's cost effective, that doesn't require a lot of value engineering. Once it's done, it helps with your timing, it helps with your ultimate costs. And back to the relationship, work with contractors that you trust, who have a history of doing things the right way and completing jobs. That variation sometimes is the result of the lower numbers maybe not being a responsible bid.
If you want a good construction price, be a good owner. And in all honesty, if you talk to contractors, honestly, their prices depend very significantly on the owner and the architect. And whether they think they're going to get timely answers and timely feedback and a cooperative responsiveness during construction. And I'm not talking about 1% or 2% difference in pricing. I'm talking you can see 15, 20% difference in pricing, same contractor, different team they're working with. Because where contractors get killed, you may get killed as an owner if the project's a year late, the contractor gets massacred. And all the times they've seen when a weak design team, the plans aren't buildable, the solutions aren't forthcoming, things stop for months at a time, that's what kills them. And if they think it's happening, they build it into their pricing. You know what I did right? I mean, my background is I came out of the social service side of this business. I was the executive director of a nonprofit CDC for 5 years, did a lot of affordable and supportive housing, but then I was a consultant. And I learned, all sorts of lessons about, things that went badly during construction. So when I did my first site as a developer, I went to contractors I respected and said, tell me which architects can put together a set of plans that you can actually build. That we don't have to design them all when you tell me they don't work during construction, and that's how I picked my architects. I'm very involved in design. I can make the building beautiful.